There is so much to know about blacksmith hammers, but I wanted to take you through some of the basics, the different shapes of hammer, what each part is used for. It seems kind of obvious, but as with many tools that have been developed over centuries, you'll be surprised at the detail and the features that are embedded in every single hammer. And if you're just starting out, you're not going to know what you want. So let's have a quick chat about them. So here we got three basic shapes. We got a pretty standard blacksmith hammer. We have a ball peen hammer in the middle. And then we got this rounding hammer, which is a fantastic heavy beast. And each one of these is used for a very different purpose. So let's explain. So let's start with a basic blacksmith hammer. So what we've got here is usually a flat face and a peen. So the peen is always the back end. So there's a ball peen, this is a straight peen. Now there are three different types of peen hammers. This is a straight peen, straight up and down is vertical. Then there's a cross peen, which as it says, goes across the face of the hammer, and then you can have a diagonal peen. Used for different reasons. Sometimes a diagonal peen is easier to get a straight peening effect when you're forging on a particular angle, and it acts basically the same as a straight peen. So why do you actually want to use a peen? If you think about the way the steel works, it's going to go in the direction of least resistance. If you want to draw out a piece of steel, if you hit it here, it's going to want to go either side because that's the least resistance basically. It's pushing, this peen is pushing the steel away from itself in that angle. It's not pushing the steel in that direction. So hitting the steel in that way is going to force it longer. Now using a straight peen like this, you can be really intentional in the direction that you want to spread the steel. Whereas the rounding hammer, there's not a lot of difference between the flat side and the rounding side, but this side here is round. And so when you use this sort of peen, it's even though it looks double-headed, this kind of a peen on this side, that's a rounding hammer. So when you hit the steel, it's basically pushing it out in all directions. It's pushing it lengthwise and it's pushing it widthwise. So a rounding hammer is good for spreading steel in all different directions, whereas a straight peen is good for spreading steel in a single direction. Now a ball peen basically is like a rounding hammer, but it's much more focused. So it's good for smaller work, for cupping bits of steel, and also for working on rivets. So when you're looking at hammers, usually the flat face is the hammer part and the other side is called the peen. So this is a ball peen and this is a straight peen or a cross peen or a diagonal peen. And in a way, the rounding hammer has a round peen and then a flat face, but this just looks like a double-faced hammer. So as with any tool that's been developed over centuries, there's a lot of nuance just in the basic hammer. This one here, not sure if you can see it very well, slightly rounded from the flat face, it's slightly rounded down to the edge, and then there's a hard spot on the edge. Now you can use that for a couple of different ways. If you angle the hammer slightly, you get a nice rounded blow, and if you angle it even more, you can get a nice sharp blow. Same with this rounding hammer. On the flat face and the round face, we have especially the round face, very curved edge, and there's no sharp delineation whatsoever on either side. So this hammer is excellent for not creating any sharp edges as you blow. And for something like this ball peen, if we're using the flat face, it has quite defined edges. They're not sharp, so you won't be damaging the steel as you hit it, but they are quite defined, so you can do very fine work on the edges of the steel without having a really rounded edge, which can sometimes be difficult for fine detailed work. Now the next element of a hammer is its weight. So this standard blacksmithing hammer here is 1.36 kilos. I'll just go through them before I explain what's going on, but let's say this rounding hammer, that's 1.75 kilos, and the ball peen hammer is 820 grams. Now, ignoring the ball peen hammer for a moment, you might not think there's as much of a difference between a 1.35 kilo hammer and a 1.75 kilo hammer, but when you're actually blacksmithing, it makes a huge, huge difference. Even just picking this up right now, I can feel this is going to have a limited lifespan in my hand in any one session, whereas the standard blacksmith hammer, you could use all day. And the 400 grams makes a huge difference. When I was first buying my first blacksmith hammer, I was online and I was just thinking, why not just get the heaviest hammer I can? And so this was the first hammer I ever bought. Quite quickly though, I started regretting it because they actually take a lot of swinging power, and I quickly decided to go and buy a standard blacksmith hammer. So the question begs itself, apart from just becoming fatigued as a blacksmith as you're working, why do you want a lighter or a heavier hammer? Well, sometimes you just want to move steel. You want to move a lot of steel very quickly, and so a heavier hammer is the way to go, because if you're trying to put a huge amount of force into a large piece of steel with a light hammer, you're never going to get through it. So you want to get a really big, heavy hammer that'll do the job well and speed up the process. And hopefully you're not likely to want to do that for a very, very long time. And on the flip side, if you're just doing some fine work, a small ball peen hammer does the job that you're looking for much more effectively because you're not having to fight the weight of the hammer as you're using it. Now, if you just want to try blacksmithing and you don't want to fork out for an expensive hammer, something like this is totally fine. I worked with this thing this is just probably a $12 hammer from Bunnings, and I used this for the best part of a few months as I was seeing if I even enjoyed doing some blacksmithing. But once you want to grow and become a bit more versatile in blacksmithing, something like this just isn't really going to cut it. So once you've established that you're keen on doing blacksmithing, these are the 3 hammers that I would highly recommend. Doesn't need to be this brand. This is McNamara. He's an Australian, I think up in Queensland, and I just love his hammers, so that's what I've been ordering. This ball peen I got from a trash and treasure market that's just up the road. It was a perfect size for what I wanted. Nice weight and just a really good shape. But as you're starting out, you want a rounding hammer, which usually has a round side and a flat side. You want a flat peen or a cross peen with a flat side, and then you want a ball peen hammer. So basically these 3 hammers let you do any project in a home forge. And if you're looking for any of these kind of hammers, I would always recommend trying to support local makers. So have a look on Google, search in your area, and there's often going to be hammer makers that you just didn't know were there. Supporting people like that is always going to be much better than buying something that's made by a huge company who doesn't really care about their product. And also, for any reason, if you need help, often that person is on hand to give that help to you. Now, I haven't really talked about handles. The handles I've got on mine are very, very straight. This ball peen has a slight thinning in the neck here. Before you've got a real preference, I don't think it makes much difference, to be honest. These are very comfortable and there's no particular shape to them. This is comfortable and there's a bit of a shape. I mean, it's very rare to be holding the hammer up here anyway. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about handle shape right now. Hope that's helped you in some way. Would appreciate a subscribe if it did, and I hope you can find a local maker who makes amazing tools. Have a fantastic day and I'll see you on the next one.